Oh, that's gorgeous.
Hello there, it's Susie Walker. I am very, very excited here to be with the wonderful Katie Piper, who is our cover star. Hooray!
Hello, it's lovely to virtually see you again.
I know, lovely to see you. So if you don't know Katie, Katie is a businesswoman, star of Strictly, author, TV presenter, podcaster of Extraordinary Katie's Extraordinary People. We love your podcast. It's in the magazine just coming.
Oh, so brilliant.
Founder of a charity for burns victims, which is really, really fantastic. So we're delighted to have you here today. And we're even more delighted that you're our new Psychologies columnist.
Woohoo! It's really exciting for me. I mean, it's a magazine that I love anyway. And actually, yeah, I mean, it's been a big part of my life for quite a long time, and particularly at the charity, you know, it's lots of people read it, and we have a lot of discussions and group work around a lot of the subjects that you cover. So yeah, I'm really excited to be writing for the magazine. It's a bit of a personal bucket list for me.
Well, it's amazing for us. I mean, you're kind of a living, breathing example of resilience and, you know, bouncing back. And, you know, as you talk about in the interview, you know, you've been through some pretty traumatic events, but it's like, that's in the past, moving on. Let's not talk about that. And I just, you know, I admire that. But also I think, you know, this is at the core and the root of what resilience is all about. First of all, how's lockdown been for you?
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to hear me moaning because I'm very privileged in that we have a garden. None of us have had symptoms. You know, we've got one another. You know, I've got two lovely daughters. I've got my husband. I think like anybody, I've been up and down emotionally, which in a way is actually quite normal. And I'd probably be worried if I wasn't. But I suppose I'm thinking of people that are in flats and tower blocks who don't even have a terrace or a balcony. So I don't feel like I'm in a position where I can kind of say, woe is me, really.
Yeah. But I think you're right. It has been, I mean, whoever you talk to, I mean, I've been talking to therapists all week for Mental Health Awareness Week, and we've all been up and down. So whoever you are, it's normal to have kind of, it feels like the language that people's using is, it's a roller coaster.
Yeah, it's true. And it's weird because some days I'm thriving and I absolutely love it. And I think, wow, I'm more connected with my children. I don't miss the commuting. I've actually got less anxiety because I've got less stress. Then other days I get really depressed and really panicky and think, what defines me? I don't have a job. What's my identity? What am I doing? All I do is load the dishwasher. I'm so bored. And then the next day I'm fine again. And I've now kind of accepted that is a little bit how it's going to be.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So in the downtime, so, I mean, you've gone through, you know, rape, acid attacks, all of these things. You've come back out of that. I want to know, in terms of trauma, what's the therapy that helped you from heal with trauma, because you're dealing with also your foundation with burns victims. Also helping so people listening to this, when they've gone through a massive trauma, what therapies have worked for you, and what do you see working for your people in the burns unit?
I think it's different for everyone, but what my personal journey of therapy started with CBT therapy. And that was a psychologist who was within the burns unit where I was being treated. So from the moment of coming out of a coma, the psychologist was there. It was an NHS psychologist with an NHS treatment. And I saw her every single day. So that I was an inpatient in the hospital. So it was very intensive therapy. And when I was discharged and became an outpatient, I went back to the hospital to see her twice a week. And then after that, I had tried a few other things that did work for me. I tried EDMR therapy.
Is that
with the light for the eyes? Yeah. Also, I tried tapping, which is something I use in my everyday life now.
Is that the EFT?
Yeah, EFT. So, you know, if I'm about to do a speech and I feel slightly on edge or nervous, just simple tapping can really help me. And similar with the 2-to-1 breathing. So kind of breathing in for 2, out for 4. That really helps me sort of regulate the nervous system, and any kind of symptoms you might get from stress or anxiety, it really helps diminish those. I think my biggest message about therapy is think of it like exercise. There's so many different ways to exercise. You know, you go online and you see HIIT training, you see weightlifting, whatever it is. If you try one style of exercise and you don't like it, you don't just pack in exercising together. You try different trainers, different clubs, different YouTube videos. So if you go for therapy and it doesn't work for you, don't just stop there. There's so many different practitioners and there's so many different services available now. You know, it's not just talking therapy now. There's all different things. So keep trying different practitioners and different methods, and eventually someone will unlock your pain, your trauma, your past, and they will help you move forward.
And what do you believe about that? There's many different theories. So this idea of that, you know, for me, it's about being able to say it out loud, acknowledging it, and then it dissipates and lets it go. The worst thing you can do is bury it.
Yeah.
So what do you believe? What do you believe is the healing process? You know, because as I say, you've done it and you're seeing all the people who are in your burns unit doing it. So how are they? What do you see works?
I agree with you that, you know, bottling something up is unhealthy, and I think what you have the potential to then do is have unmeasured outbursts, and they might be when you're using alcohol or if you're using drugs, and things start to unravel. So certainly talking therapy for me is really important, because, you know, talking therapy is almost about you coming up with the answers, because you say things out loud, you start to dissect them, accept them also, and come to that realization. But also I do agree, for some people, if the trauma is, you know, something like a rape or some kind of accident, there comes a time when you don't want to carry on talking about it, and maybe EDMR, hypnotherapy, tapping might actually be better for you, or life coaching, because it might be about the present tense, it might not be about the past for you anymore. So that's why I think you have to think of therapy as something that evolves. For me, my trauma happened 12 years ago. I've got an appointment with my therapist tomorrow on the phone, but we don't talk about rape and acid attacks and being burnt. I'll talk about me and my husband and my kids, and, you know. So therapy evolves with you, and the subjects change. You know, and I really like the American style of psychology, where everyone has a dentist, everyone has a therapist, and I don't think I'll ever stop therapy personally.
Oh, my friends go mad at me because I'm always saying, get a therapist, I mean, I've been in therapy for years. And not because I'm not going, woe is me. I just find it as a fantastic tool to grow and to learn about myself, and to say, oh, I was really triggered. I was doing some really weird stuff here, and it's my blind spot. So it's like, okay, the therapist helps me from a different angle.
I also think it's considerate to the people you have relationships with, because if you don't have a therapist, you offload to the wrong people and you burden them. And I think if you have a therapist, you can take it to a professional space that's confidential, and then you treat the other people around you like a friend or like a partner rather than like a therapist.
Yeah, no, I agree. And then sometimes, you know, I call it kind of vomiting thing, when you're just emotional or you're triggered, and you go, can I just, I mean, I say that sometimes with our team. I say, I'm just going to rant at you for 5 minutes, get it all out, and then okay, let's be enlightened now. What do we need to do? Where do we need to shift to? So I think it's really important. You talked about, as you say, different ways into feeling better. I mean, it's psychologies, you know, not everybody wants to do therapy, which is fine, but then they'll do wild swimming, or they'll do walking, or they'll be doing different things. For you, I know that you like journaling, don't you?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, I'm a big.
What are some other tools that you use in your life to help you and support you other than therapy?
Yeah, I think it's a good point, because actually not everyone can afford a therapist, or maybe they just don't feel comfortable accessing. Yeah, you touched on the journaling. You know, writing has always been something that's cathartic for me. Before it was a career of writing books, it was something my psychologist told me to do because I had a lot of anger. So as well as writing diaries and journals, I would write letters to people that maybe I felt had hurt me or wronged me, and completely seal them in an envelope and then tear up the whole thing and throw it away. And it just felt like I was screaming. It was like a release, and it was a really healthy release. But I mean, exercise is a big part of my life, because I like to really push myself to the limit, and I like to feel those endorphins and like to get that release and that sense of satisfaction. I also really connect feeling physically strong with mental strength. So the kind of training I'll do is sort of weightlifting, really heavy weights, which, you know, I'm 5'3" and about 8 stone.
I know, tiny. When I met you, I was like ginormous, and you were this tiny little.
Sure. You know. Yeah, everyone always says that. But yeah, there's something about that if I go to the gym before work and lift heavy weights, even though I'm probably not stronger than most men, I feel empowered and in control. And then if I go to a work meeting with quite an alpha male or a really dominant person, I would just feel more assertive. And that is all psychology, because of course I'm not stronger than that person, but it gives me the confidence to feel like I can hold my own. So I do think that's really powerful. But I think, really it's about being mindful across your whole lifestyle. So, I don't want to be like a preachy, boring person that says, do this diet, don't drink this, because that's gone out the window for all of us in lockdown.
I'm glad you say I've got a corona belly, I call it.
Yeah, I think we all have, but that's also being kind and letting go and not demonizing food or drink, because that's also unhealthy.
Yeah.
But we must be mindful of our choices. If I drink every single night, no doubt I'll wake up with depression, because it's a proven depressant. But I'm not saying you can't have a beer in the garden in this glorious weather, but I just try and treat my body like a business, and I want maximum return. So I've got to be really mindful of my investments and my input. Otherwise, my business is going to fail.
Yeah, that's a really interesting way of seeing it, and the way of kind of, as you say, investing in yourself, investing in your business. And they talk about like the bank account, don't they? The bank account of energy. I know one of the therapists was talking about that this week, of what you're going to fill your bank account with. And we can all be a little bit overdrawn at times.
Yeah.
But the danger is when we go to bankruptcy, when you're never putting anything in. There's that piece.
Yeah, I think that was my major life lesson from my acid attack, to come out of something where people thought you might die, to come out of a coma. I remember on a day of reflection, I thought, this body has got me through the unthinkable. How will I ever repay it? And, really understanding how resilient or strong we are. And we're all frightened at the moment of the virus. The human body can be beaten, battered and traumatized, and it can come back just as strong. So, don't doubt yourself, but do repay it the favor. Knowing how the medical things I've been through, I tried to be kind to my body. I tried to be good. Of course, I tried to enjoy it as well at the same time, but try to remember what it does for you on a daily basis and sometimes assist it.
I mean, you sound so healthy and well, mentally well, but there's that, when something terrible happens to you, whatever it is, I mean, you went through a particularly horrific time. But it's that kind of, we've all had it. We feel like a victim. We feel, woe is me. We feel, oh, it's just awful what's happened, and you can't get over it. And when you're right down in the pit, because you're outside of the pit now, but when people are listening to this, and they might feel that they're right at the bottom of the pit right now, what are the first kind of handholds you would suggest for people to start climbing out? What worked for you? You came out the coma, you realized what had happened. Where did you go from there? To get out to those first steps.
Well, sometimes I think this movement of positivity is misinterpreted, because sometimes it doesn't allow people to experience anything other than positive feelings, which actually is quite robotic and wrong. So actually, when you've been through any kind of trauma, and we can't grade the severity, because it's to the individual how it affects them. What affects me might not affect the next person. But I think in the beginning, allow a certain amount of wallowing, allow woe is me, allow anger, why me, why not them, because these are normal emotions to go through. And like you said at the start of the chat, if you don't voice these and you don't go through them, they might come out as PTSD years later. So yeah, allow yourself that time to just be whatever your emotions are. And then for me, I just became practical and methodical of, right, how am I going to do this? What can I do?
Okay, that's good. Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
And I'm a real list person, and, making lists, Googling links, looking up support networks, charities, forums. That doesn't work for everyone, but it worked for me. So choose a circle. Some people like to keep their circle small. It might be 2 people. Some people, they like to be, a huge network, and they like to be vocal online and tell everyone what they're going through. But once you make a small circle of support, you let people in and you start to trust people, and that's how you start to rebuild.
Yeah. And then when so it's almost like when you're feeling it's normal to feel a bit rubbish. You talk to the people, you allow that to, you rant a bit or whatever it is, and you feel low. And then, but what is the thought that brings you back? So you said, oh, I got practical on this, which I love. But what was the thinking that got to me, right, I'm going to start rebuilding? What got you?
I think it's choices for me, because when you have something happen to you out of your control, that is the violation right there. You know, if you get a diagnosis of cancer, if you're in a car accident, it wasn't what you were expecting. You didn't choose it. You didn't do anything wrong. You didn't, you know, you didn't bring it on, and that's really hard to accept. It's more of a bitter pill to swallow. So then you have to say, I mean, this is where the journaling came in for me. I made a list of the choices I do have. You know, let's write down what's not in my control and what is. And there was only one thing that wasn't in my control, and that was the event that happened. So when I made the list of all the things that was in my control, I was like, wow, it's so long. You know, all of a sudden I feel quite liberated and I feel in control in the driving seat. So let's set to work on the things I'm in control of, because I'm wasting a hell of a lot of energy on that one thing on that list that I can't control, you know? And again, in a way, you're in control of how much energy you give to that thing. You let it die a death and just leave it and it will go.
Yeah. And is your experience is that it does die? I think it's like it does die a death, doesn't it? It when you give it an energy, they say it's like your neural pathways in your brain. If you stop using those pathways, they just close up, and then the new positive neural pathways, they light up. Has that been your experience?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, feeding something, it's almost like a plant, isn't it? Watering it, feeding it every single day and letting it grow or stay the same. It isn't productive, and that's when something does end up defining you. You know, for me, mine's quite visible. So I couldn't go back to normal life and pretend I was never burnt and never tell anyone, because it's a facial burn. But actually, I thought, well, if I've got this permanent visible burn, perhaps I could set up a charity and help other people that have it too. So it doesn't have to define me in the way it was intended to. So even if something's visible and permanent and you can't sort of block it out in that way, there's ways to reframe it. You know, we have the ownership of your destiny and your story, and you decide the ending, not somebody else.
Yeah, I mean, that's such an empowering way to think of it, and also the kind of to be of service, because if anyone's going to listen to anyone else in terms of like sort of burn, or if you know, if you've had cancer, you can probably help somebody with cancer. If you've got a burn on your face, you can help somebody who's also going through that. So it's what an empowering and brilliant way to think about that. What about your girls? How do you teach them resilience? What are the basic, do they need teaching? What do you do with them?
Yeah, I mean, I think children emulate the people closest to them, and you know, they learn from observing, and they act out how you are. So my girls are young, you know, they're 2 and 6, but you know, I'm hands-on, and you know, I love being a mother, but it's not that I believe in tough love, but I don't believe in fussing children. So you know, if they fall over, I get them up and say, you're brave, it's fine, don't worry, don't need to cry, it's only a graze, and kind of sort of helping them just kind of get on with things, but equally not being dismissive of their experiences and their emotions as well. But I believe a lot in sports. My children do a lot of sport, and I think that helps them with not just being competitive, but teamwork as well, sense of achievement, the enjoyment from discipline and dedication and working hard. But resilience is built with life experience, and I think as a parent, if you want your child to be resilient, you need the type of resilience that says, my children will get hurt, and I need to step back and be okay with that, and trust all of our coping mechanisms and skills. You know, you don't want to be that helicopter who doesn't want them to experience anything because they're my precious baby. You know, in a way, you're doing them a disservice when they get out into the real world.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that happens a lot, doesn't it? So we don't, of course, we want to protect our children, but they don't get, so they start to fail for the first time, maybe at their GCSEs or their A levels, and they go into meltdown because they've never truly failed before and thought, okay, that's pretty bad. I can do something differently next time. But sort of teaching them those kind of, as you say, it's not even teaching them, it's just allowing, isn't it? Allowing life to happen to them a little bit more, maybe.
And also, life isn't as rigid as it used to be. There's no one which way to do anything professionally, personally. And, you know, with the internet, there's so much more opportunity. You know, I remember when I was young, if you didn't go to uni, that was it. You wouldn't earn a good salary. You weren't a professional. And I remember sort of feeling like a bit of a failure at one point in my life, and that's just not true anymore. You know, there's so many different pathways, and they all have, you know, almost equal outcomes in that sense, you know, so long as you're committed and dedicated.
But I mean, I think in terms of what I see with the resilience in young people is this very much the social media and the comparing ourselves to each other. And you're in the media world, and you know, you must see it a lot, all of the nonsense that goes in. We're both in this world. How can we kind of get beyond the kind of comparison, do you know what I mean, or the FOMO? Look at their lives, they're doing all right, da, da, da. How do you, because I think that's a lot to do with resilience as well, is to be very kind of centered in your own heart, in your own life, and grateful for that. But how do you manage that, you know, when you're seeing it all out there?
It's a good question, because actually, you know, we're saying about young people, but, you know, I consider myself fairly robust. I'm an adult, I'm a mother, and I still experience that myself. When I go on Instagram, I can feel insecure or inadequate. So it must be incredibly difficult if you've got less life experience. I suppose for me, it's trying to remember, what are social media platforms? Essentially, they are a modern version of a billboard. They are advertising. And when people are advertising, they're editing, they're showing the best bits. You know, it's the art of deception. And I think that's what kind of keeps me grounded, that is not real life. It is a shop window. And I must, like I do a shop window, treat it like that, walk past it sometimes without a second glance. And then take myself back to what is happiness. Because I remember after my attack, someone saying to me, well, you know, you can apply for criminal compensation. And I remember thinking, that's not going to help me. Money's not going to help me. That's not going to change it. And, you know, when you go through times like this, when we're all reflecting at the moment with Corona, what are the things that truly make us happy? Because capitalism will have us believe it's material things, but we're all learning it's just health, and you can't buy it. So when you do look online at people showing off slim bodies, fast cars, poreless skin, they aren't tools to happiness. They really, really aren't. And I know it's easy to say that if you might have some of them in abundance, but there's a lot of rich, gorgeous, manic, depressing people out there. You know, look at half of the celebrity world, they're all unhappy, and they all seem to have the things that everyone strives for. So you need to stay grounded. You need to take yourself back to your journaling, and you need to write down what genuinely does bring you happiness, and be honest with yourself. And, you know, don't envy other people's fake happiness.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, fake happiness. You know, that's the really key piece, isn't it? It's like, well, what's fake and what's real, and for you to really dig deep and think about what does really make you happy. And again, once you know what that is, it's so liberating, because you can stop chasing. You can stop chasing the cash, the fame, whatever it is, you know. And it's about, well, it's different for everybody. It's friggin' that. I look at your lovely little, is your little daughter.
Little afro hair at the bottom of the screen.
Brilliant, fantastic. So tell us about inspiration. So for me, I'm surrounded by inspirational people. I've got a fantastic team. You know, I'm constantly talking to experts, and for me, it's a real lifesaver. So when I'm feeling low, you know, I'll turn, you know, our back page muse in the magazine is Pema Chodron, who's this fantastic Buddhist writer. I'll turn to my greats, you know, who will make me feel great when I'm feeling low. Who do you turn to?
I think actually, yeah, I mean, people always say to me, who's your ultimate inspiration? And it's never somebody famous, because I think you need to really interact with somebody and know them to find them inspiring. I think it would be the guests that I have on my podcast, because, you know, sometimes people are celebrities on there, but that's only because they have a story of trauma or adversity. But usually they are people that don't have a profile. You wouldn't know them by name, but they've been through these incredible life-changing situations and made a huge success of their life. And, you know, selfishly, I come away from the podcast learning something and being enriched and gaining perspective, and just thinking, wow, these people are getting on with their lives quietly in a pocket somewhere in the country or in the world. And it's the unthinkable. It's maybe something that would made somebody else give up or drop to their knees. So I think that's why it's so important to keep searching out content. And in lockdown now, I think people aren't just endlessly watching telly anymore because it's too negative. and they are seeking out different books, different podcasts, different playlists. And I think when you keep searching for your content, you discover inspiration, and you discover people that you can actually relate to, that don't cause envy, and that actually inspire you to better yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you're in your Extraordinary People podcast, have you got a particular interviewee that's really stuck with you,
Yeah.
and why? Yeah.
There's been a range of people. So some people will come with their own personal stories. So there was a woman called Tilsey, and actually I met her years ago through my charity. And she had been on a plane with her brother and her mum and dad. And the plane had crashed, and her whole family had sadly passed away. She survived. She was a child, but she woke up to the news that her family were dead, and her whole face and body were covered in full thickness burns.
Okay.
So much bereavement and loss, loss of identity, loss of family. But she's gone on to do not even just an average life. She's got this phenomenal life full of empathy and compassion for those with far lesser problems than her. She trained as a Pilates instructor, and she set up a business helping patients through rehab, so cancer patients with Pilates.
Yeah.
She takes sessions. She even volunteers at my charity, helping burn survivors. And then she travels internationally. She was in Australia a couple of months ago giving talks on resilience, positivity. She's a very robust, strong, but she's also very giving, and she's very gentle still. She's not harsh or tough. So her story really inspired me. And then some people have experts. So I had Julia Samuels, who's a
I know, we interviewed her. They were good. She's wonderful.
Yeah, she's wonderful.
I love her. Yeah.
And just her voice, I felt like I was interviewing her, so soothing. I interviewed her last week over Zoom. I'm still recording in lockdown. And, she didn't talk necessarily about her personal experiences, but we talked about bereavement and, not in the traditional sense of just death, the end of the careers, the end of an era, the end of life as we know it. And it was really timely for what we're all going through now. And I felt like I learned so much from her. So, for me, it's not about being the host or the presenter. I just sit there soaking it all up. And
I'm the same. I'm totally the same. I mean, I just feel like I'm learning and growing all the time. And as you say, being able to sit there in your podcast and talk to these incredibly wise, like Julia's people, also incredibly inspiring people, I think we're kind of very privileged. And it's great to have these platforms, isn't it? I mean, you with your podcast and us with Psychologies. I mean, together, I'm so pleased that you're working with us, because what I want to do is just beam this stuff out. I mean, there is so much nonsense and negativity out there, but I think together, if we can all join forces, because there are some really genuinely amazing and brilliant people and experts out there, aren't there?
Yeah, and that's reassuring, isn't it? There are people with good intention who genuinely care. And I think no matter who you are, like you said, you don't stop learning. You never know enough.
Yeah, that's right. You never know. And then also you can always find someone new. I mean, this is what's so great about podcasts. I'm just learning. We've just got new podcast pages in the magazine with Rachel, who interviewed you, and she's doing this great column, and and it's just like she's introducing me all the time. It's like every time I get the column, I'm like, oh, what's that one? I'll read that one. I'll do. It's like just constantly feeding yourself, isn't it? It's feeding yourself with new ideas and new people. It's really, really fantastic. So so you're in our cover today.
Oh, it's such a privilege. We shot that before lockdown. It's so great that we managed to do that.
I know, just before the lockdown happened. And then also you're writing a column for us from our next issue, and I've just read it, and it's just so lovely and so wonderful. So I am just so delighted that we're going to have this ongoing relationship going forward, Katie. I think you're fantastic. I think all your advice is really strong, and obviously because of what you've gone through, you've lived it. So, you're walking the talk, and you're beaming out the inspiration. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, and thank you for giving me the platform to be able to connect with people in this way, because it just feels like you guys are so much about the same ethos that I'm about. And it's great to be able to connect with your readers, through the magazine, the column, online. It just feels like a really positive, strong community.
Yeah, it is. And we're just so glad that you're part of it. Thank you, Katie, so much. Lots of love.
Lots of love. Have a lovely day. Take care.
Bye.